Welcome, everybody, to the start of this new series of podcasts, the IDPC Podcast. My name is Franco Loisio. I'm the head of communication at the IDPC. The IDPC stands for Information Data Protection Commissioner. The objective of these podcasts is to meet the people behind the IDPC and also discuss issues relating to data protection, GDPR, and AI, amongst other subjects. I welcome our first guest, the Commissioner himself, the IDPC Commissioner, Ian Daguara. Welcome.
Thank you, Franco. And I join you to welcome the listeners of our first IDPC podcast. We are currently working on other podcasts, and which we will be releasing in due course. So my role is very interesting. I mean, to me, it's very interesting. The law vests the authority only in me, in the commissioner actually, and currently I am occupying that position. But in other EU member states, I mean, they have other setups. I mean, they have commissions, they have colleges where there could be more than one commissioner. But in our case, we have only one. So I only have the responsibility. So my primary role is to uphold the data protection rights of data subjects. We call them data subjects. Data subjects are natural persons. So we do not protect the data of companies, of legal persons, but we protect the personal data of individuals. So this is essentially what we do, apart from many other things that we will perhaps have the opportunity to discuss along this podcast.
Your office is described as independent.
Yes, indeed.
Why is this independence so important, and how is this guaranteed in law, but also in the day-to-day work?
Indeed. Independence in our work is essential. We are considered to be a quasi-judicial body. So we receive complaints, we investigate these complaints, and then we issue legally binding decisions. So these legally binding decisions can be appealed by either party to that decision. In the first instance, before a tribunal, an ad hoc tribunal, it's called the Information and Data Protection Tribunal. And then any party who does not agree with that decision of the tribunal will have the opportunity to challenge that decision before the Court of Appeal. So independence, in our case, is paramount. And this is entrenched in our law in the form of certain ad hoc provisions which provide that the Commissioner shall not be subject to any external influence, whether direct or indirect. The Commissioner shall not accept any kind of advice, from other persons insofar as his role and his decision-making process is concerned. But having said that, we must ensure that justice is not only done, but is also seen to be done. This is a legal maxim, which is usually set in the courtrooms, So, but as I explained, given the nature of our job, we must ensure that there is transparency in the process, and to ensure that, we also guarantee the right to good administration. So what does this mean? This means that we have a fair process, so any complaint is investigated impartially and fairly and transparently, and by giving the parties the opportunity to defend themselves, to make submissions. So this will guarantee the fairness of the process.
Moving on to data protection and GDPR. In the EU, the protection of personal data is more than just good practice. It's a fundamental right under EU law.
Yes.
One of the key tools to uphold this right is the GDPR.
Yes.
For viewers who might not know what exactly GDPR is, how
By
could
now,
you explain
Franco,
it?
people should know what is GDPR. I remember times when we had the previous law, the data protection law, because it's good to remind our listeners that our first law, so because many people think that data protection or our office was established when GDPR came into application in 2018. But the first data protection law in Malta came into force in 2003. So now, more than 22 years, we had the Data Protection Act in Malta. But yes, there was quite a shift. There was a change in perception, in enforcement, in how we were looked at, with first of all, with the proposal in 2012 of the Commission of the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, because the first proposal by the Commission was in 2012. The regulation was then adopted and came into force in 2016, May 6, 2016, and then it came into application because there were 2 years of transition period. There was a 2-year transition period in May 2018. So, but I remember those times because I have worked at the office for some time now. And yes, there was a lot of hype at the time, particularly when controllers, companies, organizations became aware of the administrative fines which were provided for in the law, which are quite hefty. That doesn't mean that these fines were going to be imposed in an indiscriminate manner, because, in our work, in our daily job, we do a lot of evaluation of the complaint. We do an assessment of all the cases. So it's not simply we impose a fine. We are not there because we were seen as the authority to impose the fines, which is not the case. Now, to answer your question, yes, the right to the protection of personal data is guaranteed both under the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, Article 8, and also under Article 16 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union. The tool, as you correctly said, the GDPR as a tool, gives us, the authority, the right and the appropriate tool set how we can enforce the law. And therefore, because our objective and our mission is this, to protect the data protection rights of individuals. So what is GDPR in essence? GDPR is a principle-based legislation, so it's based on principles. It is technology neutral. It provides for a number of rights which data subjects can exercise, namely the right to information, the right to access information, their personal data, the right to erasure, the right to object, the right to port the data, and it also provides certain obligations on controllers on how they must process their personal data. But apart from those, there are also the powers which we have as authorities, so that we can carry out our tasks and duties accordingly.
Moving on to something more recent, which is artificial intelligence and the AI Act. We can't avoid AI in today's conversation, obviously. Since the launch of ChatGPT in 2022, generative AI has taken off across so many sectors. It's already shaping how we work and live. The EU has also adopted the AI Act, as we know. How does it connect with GDPR? You've just been talking about it. And what risks do AI systems pose to people's data protection rights?
Yeah. Before I answer your question, I would like to mention that as a data protection authority, we are not only responsible to enforce the GDPR, but we have other laws for which we are responsible. In particular, we have the Freedom of Information Act. We are responsible also for the Law Enforcement Directive, which was transposed under regulations which were brought into effect under the Data Protection Act as well. And very soon, we will also be responsible for certain high-risk AI systems under the AI Act as a market surveillance authority. Therefore, to tie in with your question, yes, artificial intelligence now has become very topical. I always say that, okay, there is the GDPR, there is the AI Act. I see them as complementing each other. Why? Because in many cases, or in the majority of cases, when we have an AI system or an AI model, in most probability, they will process personal data, you know? And therefore, what does that mean? That if there is the processing of personal data, the GDPR will still apply. So that is why we speak about the interplay between these two legal frameworks. And we, at the DPB, currently, we are developing guidelines in order to provide for more certainty in this respect, so that controllers who are subject to the GDPR, but who are also intending to introduce AI systems, particularly those which might involve high risk to the rights and freedoms of individuals, will actually know, will have more clarity and more certainty of how they should comply with these obligations at law.
Obviously, AI is getting a lot of the spotlight, but there are other areas right now where you see real risks to people's rights and freedoms through the misuse of personal data. What are these areas?
Yes, we speak a lot about artificial intelligence, but in my view, there are other areas which are of concern, and particularly where they involve natural persons, where they involve us as individuals, as citizens, and they create an element of risk to our rights. As we said at the beginning, the right to the protection of our personal data is a fundamental right. It is true that no right is absolute, because it needs to be balanced with other rights. But our objective is to safeguard the right to the protection of personal data. I would mention two areas in particular. One is the edtech industry. So when we speak about edtech, is the advertising. So the use of personal data without our knowing, in order to target us with direct marketing, you know. And the second one, and I believe this is very important, relates to children and vulnerable persons. So we know that children are exposed to the online environment. Children do not have our experience. They do not have our skills. So, and even the GDPR provides in one of its recitals, it says that children deserve special protection. They deserve special protection specifically because they are children, you know, and therefore the exposure of these risks, they are not able to filter it out. And therefore, that is why we, as data protection authorities, should be there together with other national authorities as well. And now perhaps I will explain to you what are we going to do to make them aware of these risks. Because when they interact with the online environment, whether they are chatting, whether they are playing online games, whether they are doing any other kind of activity online, there are risks all the time. And unless they are aware of these risks, they won't be able to take the right decisions. So we should be there to make them aware of these risks.
So what is the office, the IDPC, planning in terms of concrete actions?
On this specific point, we are currently in discussion with the Commissioner for Children. We are planning to launch a series of informative videos, animation videos, targeted to children aged between 7 and 10, in order to make them aware when to give out personal data, when not to give out personal data, when to accept certain conditions, what to do when they are approached by someone who they don't know. So we are working on these videos. We are planning to release them early next year. We're still in discussions also with the Commissioner for Children, as I said before, in order to get it right, because they have the expertise. They know what kind of wording we should use, because we tend to be legalistic by nature, so we need to find the appropriate wording so that we deliver the message.
Good. Looking ahead, and to conclude this first podcast, if you imagine the next 3 to 5 years, what do you think will be the biggest data protection challenges regulators and society more broadly will have to tackle?
There is a recital in the GDPR. It's recital number 4, which starts off by saying that the processing of personal data must be designed to serve mankind. And this sentence always fascinated me, because it is true. I mean, if you were to actually read carefully the sentence and you zoom in on the verb to serve mankind, not to abuse, not to manipulate, it should give us a lot of perspective, So yes, artificial intelligence for sure is a topic which we will still be discussing in 2, 3, 4 years' time, together with not only because now we speak about generative AI. Generative AI is a system which generates text, audio, or pictures. Agentic AI, so you have an AI agent, which can help you do your work at home, do your work at the office, have a calendar. Agentic AI, which will tell you when you have a meeting, what to prepare, all these things. Now we're also speaking about embodied AI, so humanoids. So you have a robot, a companion, which is AI-driven. So this is the future. These are things which we are discussing. And in all of these, yes, there are risks. There are always risks, because all these things work with data. That's why data is valuable. We say data is valuable. And it's not a commodity. It's not tradable. And this is why we are there. Not to be a nuisance to companies or organizations, but so that they will ensure that whatever they do, I am all in favor of technology. Don't get me wrong. Because we are living in 2025. Technology is there. We should embrace it. We should use it. It will help business. I don't believe that technology will take the place of the human element, but it will assist the human element. But we need to be careful. So organizations must be careful. They must keep in mind a principle of data protection by design and default. So whatever is being designed from scratch, from the bottom, is with by design, by keeping the principles of data protection in mind, so that we have the transparency principle, data minimization principle, purpose limitation principle. Use the data only for that thing, only, Transparency, I mentioned it, the first one, is very important, imperative, that we know how our data is going to be used, So, yeah, I see those things which which will still keep us going for the coming years. Perhaps there will be other new technologies which will come around very shortly. But for sure, artificial intelligence will remain as a center of discussion for some time now. Also, perhaps the last thing which I would like to mention is also quantum computing, because this is something which is also on our radar as well. Quantum computing will absolutely increase the speeds of computing power, and seeing quantum computing together with artificial intelligence, I mean, the world in the coming 2, 3 years, 4 years will be significantly different in my view.
So there's quite a lot coming up in the next few years.
Really a lot of things. We are never quiet. We are always kept busy.
Good. So thank you, Ian, for attending this first podcast, the first in a series of podcasts organized by the Information Data Protection Commissioner. This will be obviously something which viewers and listeners can look forward to in the coming weeks and months. And I thank you for your attention.